Robert Rivas Radio, Tejano, and much more.
Robert Rivas Radio, Tejano, and much more. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Jesse Borrego to my morning show. Good morning, Jesse.
Good morning, brother. How you doing?
Doing awesome, dude. How about yourself?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Loving life.
Amigo, I'm here at your store right now here in South Presa, and I am just simply blown away, and I mean blown away by all these artifacts, all these souvenirs, all these posters, all this memorabilia that you have in your store, amigo.
Mm-hmm. Aquí es. This was the home of Crazy Vatos, which is a memorabilia project that I started a few years ago with Danny de la Paz. And, you know, Danny has a history, Boulevard Nights, American Me, and all kinds of other stuff. And Barbarossa, you know, he's been around, dude. So a while back, we started doing memorabilia and autograph signings at car shows.
Okay.
And memorabilia shows. And from there, I got the idea to actually form, you know, a shingle. And we called it Crazy Vatos. And so you want to look us up on Facebook, Crazy with a K, Crazy Vatos. SA is mine, and then Danny's out of California. So we kind of use that to promote our new projects, to, you know, get our fans autographed versions of memorabilia from our older projects, and it's worked out really well. But this was our home in this 1920 storefront in the south side of San Antonio that I helped restore, you know.
So it's kind of like the California-San Antonio connection.
Totally. Actually, Danny at that time estaba viviendo aquí. He was living here in the south side.
Oh, really?
And he was living in this building because we built a little loft apartments out of the tiendita. And hombre, le encantó, man. He was living here for a couple of years. But he got homesick and went back to LA and was able to, you know, expose the brand out there to Califas. Because it really is homegrown, you know. So there's a lot of San Anto in it, in the Crazy Vatos brand, but then there's a lot of Califas también. You know, which means to say that it's a mecca for all things Chicano, you know. Especially when it comes to the entertainment world, which is an underserved market.
I'm going to get ahead of myself for just a minute. We're going to come back. But let me ask you something, Jesse. Do you think that your movies, like Blood In, Blood Out, and American Me, and movies Mi Familia, and movies like this, do you think they're bigger today than they were back in the day?
Oh, yeah, because they've become classics. At that time, they were considered new works, you know. As a matter of fact, they were on the forefront of trying to commercialize the Latino narrative, you know. And it's something that we, as performers, you know, we're talking about Edward James Olmos has been doing it since the 70s, you know. A lot Danny de la Paz también, Boulevard Nights was in the 70s.
Sure.
So, and then me that got started in the 80s as a television star, you know, on the TV show Fame. So I got to see this kind of need for a Latino presence in the entertainment world, especially since, you know, you're in Los Angeles, it's a Latino town. And so I knew that we were the ones that were absorbing a lot of the Brady Bunch and a lot of this stuff that was coming out. So I knew that, hey, we need to represent ourselves también, you know. And so when I got into the industry as a television star, you know, I was able to be myself, wasn't stereotypical. He wasn't a drug addict. He wasn't a gang member. He was a kid who was, you know, trying to become a star, studying at a fine arts, performing arts high school. And so I was able to be real in the 3 years that I was on the show.
Right.
So as a student of the craft, when I came out of it, I said, hey, well, the next step is to tell the raza story in cinema. You know, and so I was looking ahead as to what was going to go on. And Isai was on the same onda as me, you know, and so a lot of us were trying to do the same jale. So when La Bamba came out, it was like, look, man, there's our story. I told you it could happen. And then Mi Familia, and then I did Mi Vida Loca. And then, you know, so on and on and on. So in the later years, as they created a lot of these projects, all the way up to Selena and even now, Cesar Chavez, man, we're still, Mexican-American stories are still the biggest cinema films. And so if that doesn't tell you, you know, as few and far between as there's been, if that doesn't tell you that these are classic narratives. The other day at Cine Festival at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center in the west side of San Antonio, the oldest running Latino film festival, and it's right here in the west side, at the Guadalupe, where my father performed in 1988 and in the 70s and 60s. And where my grandmother, went into labor with my mom. Wow. So there's history there.
Sure.
But I came back there in the 80s and brought my dad back with his conjunto, Los Haces de Texas. And then I started a new band with my dad, which was a kind of inspired by Los Lobos called Los Muertos. And we performed with my dad in 88 was when I started my musical career with my father. So in doing all of that at the Guadalupe, here, Cine Festival, we had a reunion last week of the Mi Familia cast. So we had Isai Morales there, we had
God.
And I did an actor-on-actor, like actors Q&A with them, right? But they were realizing too, wow, these have become classics of the raza. These are our narratives. So absolutely they've become classics. They're so important for us and future generations.
That's right. I tell you what, Jesse, now let's hit the rewind button.
Orale.
Let's go back to the day, brother. A little rewind action. Amigo, born and raised San Antonio, Texas?
Yes, born and raised.
High school?
Southside, Harlandale High School.
La Harlandale!
Indians are puro indio.
Los puros indios!
So check out this story. When in 1995, I had just, Blood In, Blood Out had just come out, right? But it wasn't a commercial success. They had changed the name to Bound by Honor. Disney was kind of ashamed of it because of all the negative press that American Me had gotten. So they tried to tank it, right? But the raza hadn't caught a hold of it yet and made it the cult hit that it is now, right? But at that time, it had just come out, and so I did something for TNT called Tecumseh, the Last Warrior. It was about a Native American chief, right? And so they said, hey, well, in order to do this part, you have to prove you're Native American, because a lot of these Native American groups are giving us problems, right? Well, being a Chicano, you know your indigena roots, right? So I was like, orale, are you serious? Okay. So I said, well, you got to prove you're Indian, right? So I had the joke running where I said, well, let me see. When I was at Columbia Heights, we were the Braves. When I was at Leal Middle School, we were the Apaches. And when we were at Harlandale, we were the Indians. Hey, what more than that do you want? So I love my roots. I love my roots. About 15 years ago, one of me and my brother's friends, my brother is a producer at UTSA here in town, James Borrego. One of our friends, George Ozuna, started the Harlandale Film School. And one of the reasons I returned to San Antonio was to be able to help these chavalones achieve their dream. Because coming from the South Side, I know there are so few and far between opportunities for them to go to the next level in whatever they want to do. They dream big. So to say you're going to be in the movie and film and television industry is a lot for a chavalon from the South Side.
So, Jesse, nothing distracted you, California, Hollywood, nothing distracted you from saying, you know what, all this is fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, there's no place like home. Nothing distracted you?
Well, the struggle as a Latino artist, as an artist of color in an industry that even now, look at all this boycott of the Oscars by the African American community and top people in the African American entertainment industry. So that lets you know that there's something going on. Now, we know this being in that industry, right? It's not our industry. It belongs to someone else. So what we do is, as contract laborers, right, we try to do the best we can. But what we've also done is we've learned the ins and outs of the industry. It's still an insider, good old boy system. So what I learned was what it takes to do this industry, to this job. And so what distracted me, I think, was believing that you could crack into this elite group, right? What kept me going and what inspired me was my love of the raza and the realization that I was the only one that wanted to tell their narrative.
Jesse, did you ever face any racism?
No, it's not racism, it's elitism. And by that, I mean, if you're in, you're in. If you're not in, then you are left to trying to hustle your talent to survive, to pay the bills. And that becomes distracting because that's never who I was. I was an artist. My dream was always I started in the Parks and Rec And in the South Side, you know, watching my father perform on stage with Flaco, watching, you know, the teatro that was happening in the barrios, you know, watching the poetas do their stuff, watching the Jesse Treviños and the Chispas of the world painting on the West Side. So I grew up watching Chicano artists. So my father wasn't rich. He wasn't a baller. He had a day job. And then he had to come home, go to the tocada, come home at 2 o'clock, take a nap, dude, and go back to work at 6.
So he got the real job.
So he had the real job. So I knew that there was a disconnect there when I saw the entertainment industry and, you know, Frank Sinatra and these dudes singing on TV. I knew there was a disconnect with who we were as entertainers because I saw us. I saw my father. I saw my grandmother who taught my father the songs that he sang. I saw us as being just as talented. So, you know, as I grew up, I said, the life of a Latino artist is hard. It's tough, right? Especially a Chicano artist.
Sure.
But I also grew up in that world. So I knew that that was valid. I knew that people wanted it. I knew that familias would go listen to the music. Y andaban en los bailes. And, you know, and that's what I grew up with. You know, we grew up with Radio Jalapeño, KDA, my grandmother on the radio. So I knew that there was a history, right? I knew my grandmother would teach us the songs and the histories, las historias de donde vino ella from Laredo. So I knew that my father had his inspiration from somewhere, and I was inspired by my parents, my father and my mother. You know, my mother she was talented, and she sang and danced and painted and did all of this stuff. And so I knew that there was something there that was being passed on to me and my sister. And my sister was one of my contemporary inspirations because she was a year older than me, Marina, and actually she sings with us in Conjunto Borrego. But she was the one that I looked up to. She taught me how to dance, and she was the singer in choir, and she was the performer, and she was the triple letter sports in high school and all that. So I was trying to be like her, be like Mike, and in return, seeing that it was all a history and a talent that was being passed on. So at that point, when I got into it, I said, how am I going to make a living knowing full well that my talent don't mean squat in this industry? For them, I'm a dancing monkey.
So then eventually
So I had to realize that and go, orale, where can I fit here?
I like that. Orale!
Orale. First of all, I was lucky enough to get into a show, Fame. Debbie Allen recognized my talent. And I was able to realize, hey, ¿sabes qué? They're letting me be me. They interviewed the 3 people that got accepted for an open audition for the television show Fame in the 80s when I was at California Institute of the Arts studying. So after Harlandale, I got into Incarnate Word College, and there was a theater program there. Maureen Halligan and Ronnie Ibbs were the leaders there, and they were camaradas con Gregory Peck. So he came and cut the ribbon for Incarnate Word in 1980, the year I graduated. Well, another camarada, Rene Rivera, who was in theater with us at Drama Club at Harlandale, put my name in because they were trying to get, more Chicanos into the program. So he put my name in. I always give praise and thanks to Rene, porque he was one of my mentors in high school as an actor. And again, a Chicano from the South Side. Do you see what I'm saying? So sure. I saw that we were just as talented, we were just as intelligent, we were just as valid, in other words.
Would you consider it opening doors for other Chicano talents as well?
At that time, I didn't think about that. I thought about blazing the trail, right? And again, it wasn't a trail that hadn't been, there was already trails there. So I was just trying to follow in those footsteps and make it a street and make it a calle. Now a lot of young and generational and successful people in the industry come to me and say, you don't remember, but when I was you inspired me to keep going to school. You said, keep studying, esto que el otro. So now I can see that a lot of what I did at that time, just being who I was, helped create, this new avenue for the generations of the 21st.
Eventually,
and the artists of today.
Right. Eventually, when you started moving forward with your career, you had to make a move from San Antonio, ¿verdad? You had to move to California?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, so I was at Incarnate Word. I was about ready to graduate.
Was it a big transition?
Yeah. And the transition again was one of knowing where I was heading. So when I went to California, the big transition was less about, the difference between San Antonio and California. Because actually where I went was California Institute of the Arts, which is in Valencia, which is a far suburb, a rural suburb of Los Angeles, So it was a lot smaller. It was an art school. So even though we were in Valencia, you wouldn't really go out into the town more than everything happened on campus, and it was an arts community. So it was almost like an immersion into being totally un artista. And I had already been living like that. I was very bohemian as a college student aquí. I was very bohemian in the way I did, to my grandparents, as much as my grandmother loved my talent and loved everything that I did, era un artista, but no, I had nothing going on. There was no future, right? And so my grandmother's biggest fear was, he's going to go the route of his father. He's going to go the route of these artistas que no tienen nada, ¿verdad? Y nomás andan en la lucha.
Que no tienen nada.
Yeah. So the fact that I was actually in college doing it was very inspirational to her.
Sure.
So when I went to California, to them it was a big transition, but to me it was the way I'd been living already. I had a suitcase packed. I was ready to go. Put me in the show. Hey, mister, I'm ready to jump on stage and do it. And so when I got into into college, which was an arts college with that mindset, I excelled. So at no point did I feel that, I'm leaving something behind. And the fact that my route was San Antonio. So, abuelita me mandaba cajas I would call them care packages. Y eran botes de Rosarita free fried beans, paquete de tortillas, un costal de papas.
Taste of San Antonio, right?
All the way, dude, all the way. So it was like, wow, man. It was like I was in the army, dude, and I was at boot camp.
Oh, Jesse, any Big Red? No te mandaban Big Red?
Nah, at that time, and I was never really a Big Red drinker.
Okay.
A mí no me gustaba el Big Red.
La Big Red.
La Big Red. And so it was great, man. And my camaradas, my suite mates, and I had an Italian friend, an African American friend. And so, man, llegaban los care packages, dude.
Oh, no.
God, Jesse, we love your grandmother, man. And every chance I got, I would come home to San Antonio, because that was my flavor, man.
Sure.
And so to me, the transition was easy.
Jesse, where did your first big break come in?
Well, soon after that, while I was in LA, or actually in Valencia at California Institute of the Arts, in LA, they were having open auditions, which is American Idol type of auditions, just walk in off the street for the TV show Fame. And Fame was a film in 79, 80 that I had watched as a young performer here and got inspired because it was about a high school of performing arts.
Right.
Y baile y canto y todo, vato. And I was like, that's me, vato. Y en los clubs nos poníamos los leg warmers and andábamos bailando como fe. And it kind of, I had already gone past the club and the kind of dancing that I had grown up with, the rancheras and the polkas and the cumbias. And my sister, who was a dancer, she had taught me all the latest hot dances, and you know what I mean? She had inspired me again.
Sure.
So she had started dancing with the modern dance program at the Carver Community Center here in the East Side. So she was like one of only a few Chicanas dancing with a whole African-American modern dance group. And they were serious, man. They were doing beautiful Alvin Ailey type of stuff. And at that time, I had just started college. So I wanted to be like her, so I started taking ballet so that I could become a better dancer, right? So both of us were kind of formalizing ourselves as performers and gaining some sort of technique. Well, then we would take those jales and we would go to the clubs and we would put it in our disco dancing y todo. Y hombre, ganábamos dance contests y todo. So when we saw this Fame show, in my mind, I was like, man, I could hang with the best of them. Tú sabes, me quería mucho. I could hang with the best of them. And so I started taking those ondas that I was picking up and then MTV was starting. You know what I mean? So I was learning all that jale and bringing it in. So I was absorbing like a sponge and then spewing it out in everything that I was doing on stage and in what I was doing in performance, right? And so when I went to LA, pues ya tenía la onda. So even though I was in the theater program, I was dancing with the dance school. I was singing with the music, because they had a big music program there. Well, uno de los compositores there was this young Puerto Rican cat who was writing salsas, and he wanted to start a little salsa group from his Latin jazz group, right? But he needed a singer porque eran puros, all the music students there that were singing were opera singers, right? And so he goes, does anybody know how to sing Spanish and salsa? And I grew up with salsa. My mother's second husband era de Puerto Rico. So we listened to all the Fania All-Stars and all that stuff. Hector Lavoe. So I had it all. So I said, hey, yeah, I sing. And I had learned all my dad's songs, right? Off of the album that he had recorded.
Right.
It was called El Conjunto Azteca de Pepe Rodríguez. In 1968, he recorded this album. Man, and I would just listen to that album daily. And I learned the songs by rote. And I would go to my grandmother and say, hey, ¿qué canción es esta? And what does this mean? Because some of them were pretty, especially the boleros, which a lot of them he would rearrange from old tangos y todo.
Gotcha.
So there was this Carlos Gardel tango that he had redone as a bolero, Cuesta Abajo. And so I asked my grandmother, well, man, this doesn't sound like your typical, español, que no es mexicano, ¿verdad? And she would translate for me. So I would be absorbing this stuff. So when I went to Cal Arts, I had all this energy with me. Este vato dijo, you want to sing with us? Órale. So they were like, and he was doing original stuff too, not just redos, but originals. So yo cantaba with a salsa band, and I was dancing with this modern dance program, and I was performing with the theater program. So I was triple threading it all the way, man. So when this audition came up, it was a triple threat audition. You had to sing, dance, then you got a chance to audition for a part.
Out of curiosity, your father performing here in San Antonio the way he did, did he ever perform at Patio de la Luz?
That I don't know.
You know where Patio de la Luz is, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
There was so many bands performed there.
Was it La Gloria? Was it La Gloria también?
Yeah, La Gloria. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, hell yeah.
There you go.
Matter of fact, Dad and Mom used to talk about, tocadas up there where they were romancing.
They have a restaurant downstairs that's still open. But... There's a restaurant downstairs that's still open. Mm-hmm. The owner owns all the building. I went over there 2-3 months ago, and he gave me the lowdown about Patio de la Luz. Mm-hmm. And he goes, would you like to take a look at it? And I said, I'd love to. And he took me up there. And Jesse, they still have the original stage.
Is he going to redo it?
He says that they don't have enough money to redo it. But the original stage is there. It's considered an historic building.
Yeah, so they didn't knock it down, because they were talking about knocking it down.
Yeah, they were. They would. To this day, they haven't yet. Amigo, let me ask you a question. You're talking...
Yeah, my dad talks about the 1, 2, 3 right there where on Alamo.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, dude. Recently I produced a documentary called Las Tesoros del West Side del San Antonio, which are Las Tesoros del San Antonio, which are, Rita Vidauri, Blanca Rosas, Beatriz Llamas, La Paloma del Norte, and La Perla Tapatía, Janet Cortez. They were all, well-known singers right after Lydia Mendoza and Eva Garza and those ladies, but they were all from the West Side. But my dad talks about tocando for Beatriz as a young accordion player right there at the 1, 2, 3.
The 1, 2, 3.
So my dad talks about all those places.
Of course.
Well, I tell my story. When I was 6 years old, and the way I know Flaco is I saw my dad with his conjunto, Los Haces de Texas, opened for Flaco and his conjunto. So I remember at 6 years old, and we used to go to my dad's tocadas, but I never saw the whole lineup. And that night I saw Flaco, and I was like, wow. And that's where I remember Flaco. So years later, when he was winning his Grammys, I said, you know what? I need to form something so that my dad, because he was a contemporary of Flaco. Flaco loves him and loves his music and all that. And so I said, man, he needs to showcase his stuff. So in 1988, after I graduated from Fame, right after the show went down, I came back to San Antonio. I rented the Guadalupe Theater in the West Side. I told my dad, open with Los Cuatro Haces, and then we'll do our conjunto rockabilly. It was like a conjunto rockabilly on that first. And that was Los Muertos, the first Los Muertos.
Jesse, the beauty of you haven't and you'll never forget your roots, ¿verdad?
Hey, you know, the way I see it, you have to, and again, the analogy I always use is the river, right? The river feeds us, man. The river gives us water, you know. Rega las matas. It fills our wells and gives us what we need to drink and survive. It helps the trees grow. It feeds the birds and the fishes and all that. There's a river that runs through San Antonio, you know.
Right.
There are springs where the river springs from here, underwater springs. So el agua viene de aquí. The river starts here. So, and again, I use that analogy because people always go, well, why San Antonio? Why San Antonio? Especially years ago, right?
Sure.
When I was living in L.A. and, you know, I moved to the west side where MGM was, you know, so I lived in Culver City first and then Venice Beach next. Right? And I raised a daughter in Venice Beach. She was raised in Venice Beach when I returned there in the late 90s, 2000s. But the wellspring of my inspiration and passion, la cultura que cura, is from here, San Antonio. You know, and it's been interesting that I've returned here and there's been this whole renewal, not only in production right up the street in Austin, but in la música, in la cultura, in what they call the creative and cultural economy. They've given it a name. The city calls it the creative and cultural economy. So it's a great time to, again, return back to that onda, you know, to that wellspring. You know?
Sure. Jesse, let me get your opinion on a movie, only because we're talking about fame and musicals, dancing movies, however you want to put it. Staying Alive. Mm-hmm. What did you think about that movie?
I saw Saturday Night Fever. So I loved Saturday Night Fever because I was into disco at that time.
Okay.
I was a fan of John Travolta because of the pop world. John Travolta because of, Welcome Back, Kotter.
Sure.
Remember, again, when they say that Chicanos don't absorb content, they don't go to the movies, they don't buy, it's malarkey. It's a myth that's been perpetrated by the industry, perpetuated by the industry in order to control the content that's created, right? They want to control the Latino consumer. So they want to be able to control the content that's given to them. Now, this is something that I've known since I was a chavalón, because I grew up watching American TV, right? So when John Travolta and Welcome Back, Kotter, and then Grease, and then Staying Alive. So para nosotros, hey, órale, you know, and being a disco dancer,
right?
Ooh, la onda. And then don't you love the fact that it was the Latino couple that actually should have won?
Right.
That's what I loved about it. Again, validation, bro. You know, cultural validation as a young Latino dancer. Wow, look at that, man. So when he did the sequel, Staying Alive, and again, I was a fan of Rocky and Stallone. So when I knew that Stallone had done that, again, being a fan of film, a fan of entertainment y todo, and being a college dancer at that time, Staying Alive was about this club dancer trying to be a legitimate, real performer. So that was me, dude. So I identified. So when I saw Staying Alive, man, for years I've thought that we should do the sequel with a Latino, you know. But there's a Latino Saturday Night Fever that's here in San Antonio. That's one of the projects that I'm trying to develop, because the disco scene was huge in the late 70s, early 80s in San Antonio.
So you liked the movie. So you were good with the movie.
Oh, yeah. Staying Alive.
You liked it.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Jesse, we're going to take a break in the action. But before we take a break, I've got to ask you this, man, because I've got to ask you this. We're talking disco. A lot of people call me a disco duck. That's okay.
Hey, I was called disco duck in Harlandale, dude.
Okay, now let me ask you this, Jesse. What were some of the discotheques you used to hang out here in San Antonio?
Okay, I was young, so I didn't get to go to... I got to go to Burgundy Woods, right? Because Burgundy Woods lasted.
Sure.
But I didn't get to go... I didn't get to go to the other one, Hallelujah Hollywood.
Okay.
I didn't get to go to Hallelujah Hollywood. I didn't get to go to the Odyssey. I was too young. As a matter of fact, I tried to get into the Odyssey one of the last few years of there. But I did get to go to the later ones. I got to go to Burgundy Woods, Disco Fantasy. Remember in the South Side?
La Casa Zamora?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I used to go there when it was the party house, La Fuente Party House.
Wow.
And I got to see the old, that was the only places that we could go.
What about Close Encounters?
Close Encounters. It was in the South Side. So that was my era. Close Encounters.
The Heaven Disco?
Burgundy Woods.
Did you ever go to the Heaven?
I didn't get to go to Heaven. No, I didn't get to go to Heaven.
Spanish Armada?
The Aquarium. The Aquarium.
The Aquarium?
The Aquarium was, what was that before? It was
West Avenue, La Manda?
The Odyssey before, right?
No, the Aquarium was actually on West Avenue.
Yeah, there you go.
It was on West Avenue.
Yeah.
The Odyssey was on Main.
The Odyssey was on Main.
Estamos todos reminiscing aquí, Jesse.
But then the one I really got to go to in the 80s was Daddy's. Remember Daddy's busted out?
Oh, yeah, Daddy's.
Daddy's, man, and it was hardcore.
Dr.
disco
Feelgood?
for a second.
Did you ever go to Dr. Feelgood?
Dr. Feelgood.
Hey, voila. Jesse's all impressed. There we go. Jesse, let's take a break in the action. You're listening to Jesse Borrego on Robert Rivas Radio.
Vatos Locos forever. This is Jesse Borrego, and you're listening to Robert Rivas Radio. One time.
Robert Rivas Radio, Tejano, and much more. And I'm back here with Jesse Borrego. Oh, hey, Jesse, we're talking discotheques. We're talking, memory lane, dude. I feel like going back home right now and trying to put on my leisure suit, but it's not going to fit, brother.
Hey, well, one of the things I like to point out to young chavalones that are talking about being performers and being in the entertainment industry, I go, the one thing you can do is to keep working on your technique, your performing talent, whatever it is that you think you're good at. Keep working on improving it. And I point all that disco stuff out because I wasn't partying. It was enjoyable. Yes, don't get me wrong. Andabas en el club y todo. But for me, a lot of times as a young club goer, I wouldn't even drink. What I was doing was I was dancing. I was looking at the best dancers. I was looking at the new steps. And my carnala was one of those too. What my carnala would do is she would go to these clubs to the air. She would sneak in as a younger dancer. She was able to get into the airmen's clubs. Well, she was meeting all these dudes from New York, Puerto Rico, and they were showing her the latest steps.
Right.
She was bringing them to me, showing them to me so that we could use them in our contests, right? Well, when we would go to the clubs, we would hone these crafts. Y como te digo, once she started dancing modern, and once I started dancing ballet, and we started putting that into our performance. Do you see what I mean? I was taking all these little influences.
You were learning.
And learning.
You were learning.
So that by the time I got to the audition, I already had things to pull out of the bag.
Ya estabas listo.
Ya estabas listo.
Yeah.
So that open audition for fame was a study and I tell people, in how to present yourself in the best light. Because remember, I was competing against the best. So when I went to that audition at MGM Studios, it was an American Idol audition. I got there with the first 25 people early in the morning. But by the time they opened the doors, the line was around the block. And remember that MGM is about 10 blocks long. So it was so I got scared, man. I saw, oh my God, how am I going to compete against the best in LA?
Yeah.
And so I was like, this ain't San Antonio anymore, baby. This ain't Kansas anymore. But I had already been told by a mentor friend of mine who was a director at that time who had brought me up here in San Antonio, Ozzy Rodriguez. He was one of the first Puerto Rican directors to do a show at La Mama Experimental Theater in New York. He said, hey, Jesse, just remember to do your best and remember to be you. And I went, orale. So when I went into that audition and they said, hey, the dancers dance now, the singers are going to go sing in another studio. I was already strategizing. Hey, I'm a good dancer, but these people have been dancing since they were 5 years old. They're the best in LA. I'm good, but chances are there's somebody just as good as me. I'm just as good a singer, but I've got something special, man. I've got my grandmother's songs. I've got my dad's talent. So I went with the singers. And while we were in line, I went to the back of the line and I looked and I said, well, who are they? Who's making it through, right? They would give you a number. If they said thank you very much and they didn't give you a number, you knew you were cut. So I looked and I realized that they were keeping people with natural voices. So I said, all right, I sing just like my dad. We got natural voices, man. I got this. Then I said, but how can I set myself apart? And I didn't have sheet music ni nada, right? I didn't want to sing with them. They had a piano player, but I wasn't used to singing with accompaniment. So I said, nombre, I'm not going to. And I said, ¿sabes qué? I'm going to sing that Carlos Gardel song. I'll bet you they never heard that. And I learned it by rote, my dad's performance.
Really?
So I went up there, and at the same time, I had worn these baggy clothes to look younger because we were supposed to be in high school. So me quité la sweatshirt y los pants y todo, and I had sweatpants underneath. So now I look like a dancer. I've been watching the show. So I went up there and I looked like this young Latino dancer. And they said, well, let's see if this guy can sing. And I turned around and I went, si arrastré por este mundo la vergüenza de haber sido el dolor de ya no ser. Bajo el ala del sombrero, cuántas veces embosada, una lágrima asomaba, ya no pude contener. And I went, oh, by the way, I can sing in English too. With the morning comes the dawning of a day. A Gap Band song, dude, that I had learned. And they said, thank you very much. Here's a number, 135, come back. And I went, whoosh, made it through the first part. And then when I went back to dance, I was dancing with all these singers. So there was all these skinny white guys and large black women, and I was a dancer, dude. So guess what? When it came down to do my thing, I did my ballet and my club dancing and my break dancing. And Debbie Allen said, this kid is a great dancer. If he can sing, sign him up. And so I gave him my picture. I had a mimeograph copy porque no tenía feria para un 8x10. And a camarada who was in Cal Arts with me, she was a photographer in photography school. She did a picture and then mimeograph copy. She gave me a mimeograph copy of a picture and my name, right? And that's it. And it had all my information. Y se tallaron con él and they threw it away, dude. They lost it. So weeks after, they were calling everyone back for open call, ¿verdad? They never called me, dude. And I said, man, I thought at least I'd get a chance to do what my real mole is, which is acting.
Right.
I didn't even get a chance to act. And then there was a couple of people from our school, because it was a fine arts school, and they had dancers and singers, got called back, and chale, they came back and said, no, I didn't get picked. And they said, yeah, they got everybody already. You know, they got Janet Jackson, and they got this person and that person. I said, hijo, que gacho. I didn't even get a chance to. So about 2 weeks later, and all the hubbub had died down, and I forgot about it. I was working on a play at school. Y viene un camarada y me say, hey, dude, I saw you on TV last night. Something about that the Fame producers wanted you. And I said, este vato, he's making fun of me porque me creía mucho, right? Y le dije, ¿sabes qué? That's not funny, dude. No, I'm serious. I said, yeah, we almost got into it, y este que el otro. And he reminds me of it now. I go, hey, you remember I'm the one that told you. And I said, nah, whatever. It's a BS, right? The next day, my roommate wakes me up. Hey, dude, they're flashing your picture on TV and your name saying, you better call them right now. They're looking for you. So I called them up, right? And they said, what were you wearing in the picture? And I told them, well, I was a cut-off vest, esto que el otro. We found him! We found him! They said, we've been looking for you. We lost your number and your contact. You know, can you come in? Esto que el otro. People have been calling in saying they're you, dude. Hundreds of people. I said, man, nobody ever wanted to be me before, right? So I came in and I auditioned for them. Well, of course, that's my mole, right? They said, man, we love you. You're perfect. So then they went and I auditioned for the producers, and that's how I got picked. But my chance, man, it was like an American Idol audition, dude.
The beauty of that, no.
Yeah.
Jesse, your resume is out of this world. It is so impressive that we're going to have to do a second interview, dude. A couple of months from here, brother, we'll do it again. But for right now, we're going to jump the gun here, and let's talk about blood in, blood out, bound by honor. Mm-hmm. Amigo, where did this start for you? Where did this happen, this relationship between you and this movie?
Well, it actually happened the last year of Fame. The last year of Fame, they were having auditions for La Bamba. So I got to meet, I already knew Isai because me and Isai Morales had worked together on Fame. There's an episode of Fame where Isai is a gang member who's trying to jump me into the gang. And my mentor is trying to keep me in school, in high school, and saying, no, dude, you're a performer. And so me and Isai got to work together dramatically. So we were already camaradas, right? And then I got to meet Lou Diamond Phillips, but I got to meet Taylor Hackford, who was the producer of Fame. I got to meet Luis Valdez, one of my other heroes, but I got to meet Taylor Hackford. And of course, I didn't get to work on La Bamba. And I think Lou and Isai were a strong duo.
Out of curiosity, what position were you going for La Bamba? Do you know what role you were going after?
I think they were just looking at me in general.
Okay, I got you.
think they were just looking at all Latino actors.
I got you.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I really impressed Taylor with my audition, right? And so I think he kept me in the back of his mind, like, man, I want to work with this guy. Okay. And so when Blood In, Blood Out came out, when Jimmy Santiago Baca wrote the redraft of Blood In, Blood Out, which was from another script, Taylor called me. And Taylor said, hey, dude, you got to be in this movie. You can either play the cop or the Chicano artist. And I went, the Chicano artist, dude. There's never been a Chicano artist portrayed in American cinema. We have to do it. And again, I grew up with that. It was my father. It was, these artistas that I had grown up with. It was all of us. And so I really felt that was where I was going to be able to, put my voice in there. And a lot of people from San Anto dicen, hey, traes ahí el lingo de San Anto. I digo, pues yeah, even though it was supposed to be, even though it was caló, right? And I was trying to keep true to the caló de Califas. The 1970s caló had a lot of influence from the migration between Texas and Califas. A lot of families in California have migrations from Texas and vice versa. A lot of families in Texas have migrations from California. So that lets you know that we stay connected, like Mexico, dude,
Jesse, there's so many memorable parts in this movie. I don't even know where to start or ask. So I'm going to ask you.
The art, man. Talk about the art.
Let's talk about the art for right now. Let's talk about the art.
So again, remember that for me, in the portrayal of this character, I wanted to create a three-dimensional character, right? There was elements that you could claim were stereotypical to the Latino narrative in film, but I wanted to be inclusive of everything that encompassed. And the urban experience of the Chicano, which is what American cinema has represented, Boulevard Nights, any of your television shows, even Robbie Benson in what was that movie that he made?
Gang Member?
Yeah, no. ¿Cómo se llamaba la movie de Robbie Benson where he played
yeah, he was a gang member, right?
Yeah, he was a gang member.
I am Chicano or something like that?
Proud or something.
Yeah. That's an awesome movie, dude.
So, yeah. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, the idea of it was there. But again, it's still rooted in a very limited Latino narrative, which is, the urban gangster dude, the guy on the fringes, tú sabes, this close to being a criminal, the outlaw, tú sabes. And so to me, I was like, okay, here's an opportunity to create a three-dimensional narrative of that. And as an actor, as a well-trained stage, theater, remember, yo fui al colegio. So yo venía with all that onda. And Fame was a film school because we shot on 35 millimeter film. It was a dramatic narrative. So I got to create, Jesse Velasquez was a very real character. Everybody thought he was Puerto Rican, but it turned out that in one episode, I was from Juarez, dude. So not only was I a young Latino performer, but I was an inmigrante, dude. What an incredible character to play, man, and well-versed bilingually. He was, even though I was Chicano, my character was an immigrant. So it was great, dude. I could prove that, hey, as an immigrant, we're bilingual, we're multifaceted, we're talented. So to take that, I had to make sure that I brought that to Crucito. That he wasn't a gang member, you know what I'm saying? That there was something more to that. And I also had the insight to know that cuando chavalones click, cuando estás tirando barrio y todo, you're not a criminal, man. In the barrio, that's not being a criminal. That's being like Fonzie. That's being, the greasers were not criminals. They were representative of the youth counterculture, And in America and in American cinema, that person and that onda is maybe on the fringe, but it's also a true American hero. And so I said, hey, with these characters, we can create true American heroes, man. And more than that, this character has a visual talent. So I said, ¿sabes qué? We can do this. At the same time, I also met Adan. Adan Hernandez is the artist who did all the paintings for Blood In, Blood Out. Well, Adan is from the west side of San Antonio, dude. He went to Edgewood High School.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
So, es de Robstown, dude. So, es de Texas. So, they came from the Pizca, moved here when he was young, and he taught himself how to paint here. He was in the disco scene con todos nosotros también, dude. But he was an older cat, right? And his story is incredible too. Self-taught, y este que el otro, inspired by Jesse Trevino and
did you have any
Mel
influence?
Casas and all these guys.
When they were recording the movie, there was one scene where you're having an art show, and your buddies show up. And, you fall back to the way you are, man. You're an artist in the movie. But, hey, man, you got your buddies. Hey, congratulations.
Yeah. ¿Por qué se trajeron ese baboso? Los polivoces, dude, the reference to los polivoces.
And you come back falling on the ground and all that. I go,
Okay, so here's the thing about that. When Taylor hired me, Taylor said, hey, dude, not only do you have to be in this film, but you have to help me cast this film. So in the course of that, I said, hey, dude, now here's the thing, Taylor. Anybody who comes up, they got to be able to stand me. So I'm going to ad-lib, and I'm going to throw Chicano slang. I'm going to try and throw them off their game to see if they can hang. He goes, do it, dude, do it. That'll prove, if anybody's got their chops. Acuérdate, they were trying to get Sean Penn in as Miklo, so they were trying to get really good actors. So I said, hey, so they were saying, Jesse, you're at Sean Penn's caliber. In doing what you do, you're at Sean Penn's caliber. So do what you do. So I was flipping it at him, dude. I was throwing people under the bus and trying to see if they could hang, right? So le estaba tirando, barrio, le estaba tirando Chicano slang, todo el pedo, ¿verdad? So if you couldn't say órale and knew what I was talking about, then look out, chale home, este que el otro, right? So in doing all of that, I was really creating this kind of code that Taylor really liked. So when we started filming, Taylor said, you can do or say whatever you want. Make it authentic. He goes, just make sure. And I said, yeah, I got it. The narrative, the drama, the plot is all there. That's what I do, Taylor. He goes, I trust you. Do it. So he was allowing me to throw in slang and throw all kind. It came back to bite us a little later because he had a question and an issue about something, and I had to stand my ground, but they totally understood my point of view in terms of what I was trying to do with the character. And I really believe that it's a gift to the raza. And I think a lot of times that's why the raza subconsciously doesn't understand why they love that character so much. And they say it's because a lot of times they say, oh, you remind me of my uncle. You remind me of my brother. You remind me of my dad. The older gentlemen will go, you remind me of me. You remind me of us and our camaradas. And also, but I was also able to take our Vatos Locos, El Benjamin. And Benjamin is an astute actor. He's a student. And really, he's Peruano. His mom is de Peru, de Lima. Little Latina, strong, indigenous woman. But she moved to San Francisco in the 70s and was part of the AIM movement. So they grew up in la onda indígena, but in la onda, in the Mission District, in La Misión también. So they grew up with these strong Chicano characters. They grew up with one of the first lowrider clubs there in La Misión. And so they grew up with that onda, so they wanted to be authentic to it. So Benjamin was like, hey, dude, I really want to be authentic. Help me out.
He sold it, man.
Yeah, well, he was a
awesome.
student of it, dude.
It was awesome.
And teach me how to say this. And you know what I'm saying? Yeah. El Damien también. El Damien studied with us. But El Damien is more, he really is half white, half Chicano, but he didn't grow up with his dad. Now his dad from Robstown, la mera onda, vato, hablas con él, yeah, man, la mera onda de Robstown.
Jesse, amigo, my brother, God rest his soul, he passed away like 4 years ago, but he would always quote you. He would always quote you on one thing that you say in the movie, and he would say it all the time. We joke around about it. He would always say it, man. He'd see a good-looking girl. Anywhere we're at, he'd go, te voy a pintar, mija. Was that original when you came out with that? Was that on the script or what?
You know it, man. You know it.
Te voy a pintar, mija.
And the beauty of that script, on both sides, is that it was an artwork that was being developed as we were doing it. Adan was here painting these beautiful paintings, and then going to LA and, watching us on the set, taking pictures of the characters that he was going to paint, and then as he was doing it, when they were in prison, I would come back here and, I just let my hair grow and sat with him in the studio, and he would teach me the strokes so that I would look authentic, and I would watch the way he would hold it and the look y todo, that's what Crucito's look was going to be. But at the same time, when we were filming the first part, which was The Young, I was there living in the barrio in East LA, in City Terrace, con una beautiful familia, George, ¿cómo se llamaban? George, no eran George Chavez, was our George. Oh man, but it was a beautiful family, man, and we lived with all of them right there in City Terrace. Pero con la familia que me cuidaban, they were trying to get us in the onda so we could see the real band. We were next to a gang house, man. We were next to the Garrity Loma Dukes. Sí. So estábamos en la mera onda, dude. There was drive-bys the first week we were there at the park that we were hanging out at with the familias. But just to show that there was this kind of a siege mentality, at the same time, it was just like any other beautiful barrio, dude. There was families. Gente iban para la iglesia on Sundays mornings. They would go to church. Kids would go to school and come back. So there was this sense of, wow, there's this weird war happening. But on the face of it, Chicanos are surviving, man. These people are surviving. And so I wanted to put that in the film, by having us be there in La Onda, So absorbing all of this, then I would try to put that into my performance, right? And including that was the art that Adan was creating, and the Shakespeare that Jimmy Santiago Baca was writing, because he wrote this beautiful language. You listen to that last speech, that's all Jimmy Baca. We come out chased by hounds, wearing a pinche rabbit's foot for luck, one step ahead of the pinche hounds. Que vida loca, que loca vida, because we're from East Los. We come out chased by hounds.
Jesse.
So when he was writing that, I wanted to make sure that my Chicano slang, my ad-libs were off of his riff.
Sure.
Because he's a poeta. So a lot of that, even though it looked like it was spinning off the cuff, it was well thought out, dude. I did not want to step on Jimmy's dialogue and Taylor's narrative, and so for me, I think it was very, very important to make sure that the ad-libs that I did were in the vein of it, in the zone. But again, Taylor trusted me, dude. Taylor and Jimmy really trusted me. So I think I was filling in, the groove, man. I was making it groovy, dude.
Sure.
I was jazzing with it. They were letting me jazz on it, riff on it.
One part that I really, really liked, Jesse, that you portrayed was in this movie was the celebration when you won your awards for being an artist, and then the backyard party. That backyard party is like any backyard party, en la onda, con la raza. But really, the part that I thought was simply awesome was when you start grooving to that song, "Searching for My Baby," and you start grooving to it, man, and you got that. There you go, and you groove to it, man, and then of course it gets ruined, but you're getting beat up. How tough was that scene? When they pull you out of the car, they hang you over the fire hydrant and they drop you down. Was that a tough scene to do?
No, I think, I grew up as a theater actor.
You sold the pain.
Dancer and a performer. So at that point, especially when it comes to a scene where there's stunts, where there's, physical stuff, where there's, plot narrative that you have to sell, the cutting of the tattoo, special effects, all of that, I kind of go into the zone and I try to make sure that I'm fulfilling what I have to, and this is my craft. This is what this is what I bring to the table. This is my unknown. How do I do it? And again, you have to realize that in a film, shooting a scene, you're going to do something over and over and over and over and over. So, I appreciate someone who can get worked out. I've seen vatos punch the wall to get into it. You know what I mean?
Really?
Otros vatos se rasguñan los ojos to cry. You know what I mean? Some dudes, they may really get drunk to do a drunk scene.
Really?
That's not what I do.
Really?
I'm a storyteller. It's illusion. I'm a storyteller. Te digo cuentos. I'm a singer. I'm a dancer. I'm a song sing-abouter. Right? And so in telling a story, it's effective if you believe that the character's going through that. It's not effective if you think that I'm going through it, Jesse Borrego, the actor.
Right.
So at that point, I'm very careful, to make sure that we get what the camera needs, what's happening, and that includes the emotion of the character. That being said, I enjoy it, dude. I enjoy pretending, man. I enjoy that I'm, that they're beating up Crucito. And again, the narrative is, wow, look at this incredible character and how far he's going to go. So I have to make sure that moment, where Crucito goes to the hospital, gets hurt, it's soul crushing, because that's what's going to lead him to El Vicio, right? To being a tecato.
But you know what, Jesse? In the movie.
So in other words, I'm trying to explain why our raza might become tecatos. Not because we're criminals, but because there's real physical trauma,
But Jesse, in the movie, I just came about this right now. I'm thinking about this. You come as a very conservative character in the movie, in a sense, because the rest of the guys, they're gang members, man. They're out there. They're killing. They're beating up people. You're not. You're the artist. You're the more conservative guy in the movie, ¿verdad?
Well, that's another thing that I wanted to show that I think is not in this American narrative of us. Every time I work, acuérdate, dude, I started with Martin Scorsese, who was my first film director. But even before him on the television show Fame, I was working with Debbie Allen. I was working with Arthur Penn. I was working with incredible people. But at the same time, I had already worked with Ozzy Rodriguez from La Mama Experimental Theater in New York. I had already worked with George Wolfe, who wound up winning an award for Lackawanna Blues and, all these other projects. In other words, to let you know that as a young artist coming up, I had already worked with geniuses in terms of dramatic narrative. And at the same time, I had already been doing Shakespeare and working in college with all of the best theatrical minds. So to me, the narrative was something that I was good at. So when you go to what has not been said in American cinema about the Chicano experience, I knew what was missing, right? And that just to tell you where I come from as an artist. So when I got the opportunity to get a character that's going to be able to say whatever he wants, I said, okay, what's missing? And I realized that in this story about us trying to survive as Latino men of color, there was this underlying theme of aggressive macho violence. And that's the only way. Remember that it goes to prison, dude. The main character goes to prison.
Right.
And the only way that he can survive is by ultimately betraying his own mentor, right? But his mentor was not a violent man. So the narrative there is that there was this guy that came out of this sindicato, this mafia, that was trying to uplift the raza. He was trying to be like another Martin Luther King, or no, not even like a Malcolm X, who then became a kinder, gentler Muslim, or in other words, this idea of this character trying to rise above, right? So what I did that, and I went, okay, so then in our narrative, what's not being told? The fact that young Chicanos are being gang members, are clicking in the barrio, están tirando barrio, because they're proud of who they are, because they're trying to validate their cultural identity, not because they want to kill somebody.
Right.
That's a myth. And the myth has been proven in sociological studies. You know what I'm saying? It's been proven. And so I had to put that in this film. You see what I'm saying? So I said, how am I going to do that? Orale. So, I tried to find a way to put it, and I knew that I was doing it by being an artista. I knew that I was doing it by being this mentor to this young kid, right? By teaching him our history. So I saw that was there. But then after that, my character goes down all the way, dude. There is no redeeming until the end.
You're in a tailspin.
Yes. So I had to find some way to do it right in that area. So the only place that I could find to do it was at the critical time when they were about to do their first violent act as Vatos Locos. Before that, Vatos Locos was barrio, was brotherhood, was carnalismo, was arte, was cultura, carros, rucas, música. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
That's what we know as Vatos del Barrio, as the Pachuco. As you see what I'm saying?
I understand.
That
I understand.
is not told in American cinema. Was not at that point told. So I said, cool. Now, the point where it turns ugly, where these chavalones hate each other, hate their own selves, they're looking, that's something that was identified by Luis Rodriguez as self-hatred, the hatred of the inmigrante, the hatred of the marginal culture, right, in American society, especially at that time in the 1960s and 70s, where a lot of us were going to prison, you know, for having un toquecito, or for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Or how about being deported for being Chicano and not having papers, you know, like in Mi Familia.
Right.
You know, in the 40s and 50s.
Sure.
So again, all of this oppression, the Zoot Suit riots had just happened, dude, you know. So we were still struggling with this in our urban communities, you know, police brutality, the whole bit. So extrapolate from that this, you know, this self-hatred, and now you have the powder keg. And the powder keg is that, guess what? Since I ain't got nothing, this hood is mine. So, ¿sabes qué? Y tú, y que la fregada, y hasta que el otro, right? But whereas it's not really explained in American cinema, I had an opportunity to explain it here because the rest of the movie was really about Miklo's struggle, right?
Right.
My struggle was about to go dark all the way, right? And so in that sense, I had to find a way to put it in. And so I said, here's where it goes, right here. Hey, órale. ¿Por qué se quieren pelear, vato? You guys always want to fight other raza. I put that line in. Taylor Hackford and Jimmy Baca said, wait a minute, do you know what you're saying? And I said, dude, you guys have been trusting me this whole time. Yeah, man, I go home and I work. I understand, you know. I go, you guys haven't been saying, let me say, okay, órale. They let me do it. The next day they went, we got a problem with this because we think that people aren't going to believe that you're a gang member, right? And I went, okay, let me tell you something. Right now you got an entire movie of people mad dogging each other. I go, if you don't allow my character to be who he is, you're going to lead me to believe that you believe that little vatos that are in the barrio are doing it to hurt other people. And that's bullshit. I go, they're doing it for carnalismo, to belong to something, for some sense of fraternity, to get rucas, to look good. You know it. Los vatos del barrio de trameados y todo, they got the best, the finest rucas, am I right?
Sure.
Las más mamazotas andaba con el vato que tenía el carro, vato del Impala. And I said, and so that's what I want to show, Taylor. I go, it's going to make more sense later on when this guy that was preaching this anti-violence stuff, he winds up getting his little brother killed by drugs. I go, talk about dramatic, you know what I mean, reversal. Taylor goes, when I spoke to him like that, he understood it. Jimmy understood it. Like, you guys are right. And that's the only time they ever questioned me. The rest of the time, they knew that I knew what I was doing.
Jesse.
And I think that's why that character resonates, because he has that dramatic arc.
Let's move forward. The death of Juanito.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a tough part?
Death of Juanito. I think, again, at that point, you're so in the zone. You're so in the zone that it's enjoyable to be doing it. You know, by that point, we'd gone through the whole first part. Ben had already gone and done his prison stuff. You know what I mean? And they had already come back, and we were doing the back half of it, right? And so I think we'd been in the project for so long. And I'd been watching Estevato paint, you know, and I was so ahead of the game. That the biggest issue for me was that when I walked on, and this lady was working on the, one of the production designers and artists was working on the copy that I was going to cut. I said, man, that's beautiful. It's a recreation, right? She goes, yeah. I go, great. How many of them are there? She goes, there's only 2. I said, you know we do more than 2 takes, right, in any normal film. Not only that, but Taylor used to love to do multiple takes. And she goes, it's too complicated. I can only do 2 of them. She goes, there's a couple of inserts for the close-up. I go, yeah, but that's for the close-up. He's going to want the big one, dude, where he sees me cutting it. So I go to Taylor and I go, Taylor, there's only 2 of them, dude. He goes, oh, well, you better nail it. So I went in, dude, and I had to make sure I did it right in 2 takes.
Did you ever get any kind of feedback from gang members? Anybody say, hey, I say you didn't do it right, or y'all guys didn't do it right? Anybody come back at you, pissed off about the way the movie was portrayed with gang members?
Nah, and I think one of the things we did is we engaged the community. We were there. We were with the Vatos, we were trying to weave their experience right into it, even though, we were there in the 90s and we were trying to portray the 70s. We used a lot of people from the barrio as extras. And so I think the biggest issue probably was being in San Quentin and telling a story about sureños, because at that time there was this whole norteño-sureño conflict happening, which is really ridiculous because we're all Chicanos and we're all incarcerated, and it's ridiculous to be, fighting along geographic lines, and so I think that was the only issue, because the production was actually in the prison milieu, and they were using a lot of convicts as prisoners. And so, you had to make sure, not to throw colors or talk colors or affiliations, because that's not what it was about,
Right.
It was trying to tell an actual history that happened in the 1970s, And so I think that was the only delicate point. But I think once they got past that, and once they realized, hey, man, this is a fiction, we're just telling a story. You know what I mean? But it's based on narratives and histories that are really inspired. So let's just tell the story, And at the same time, cuando andábamos en the barrio, we were hanging out with one group, and when we went into main population, which was on the main drag, pues es otro barrio. So cuando andaban estos vatos on the main drag, andaban tirando barrio, vato, órale. So they didn't get it, these chavalones, huela fría, vato, tú sabes. So when they went home, we were still filming, and it was during one of the scenes cuando andaba con la Azteca princesa, vato, pintándola, cuando andaba pintando en el carro, there was gunshots down the street at our main camp. And actually, one of the caterers, the guys who cooked for us, got hit in the arm.
Really?
But it was because earlier in the day, when our extras, que eran del otro barrio, were down there, andaban tirando barrio to the cars that were passing by. And they went, all right, we'll be back. And they came back later on in the night and tiraron un drive-by at the base camp, dude. Pero porque estos chavalones, pendejos, no andaban, thinking, dude. But that just goes to show you, again, the mentality of all of these. These chavalones are not thinking, dude, But I wanted to show that. I wanted to show that the mistakes that our youth makes in this kind of, counterculture environment are mistakes, man.
Sure.
And they impact not only Crucito, but then they impact Benjamin. And remember that Paco was more violent than Miklo. So even though we love the cop at the end, it's really his fault that Miklo became who he was.
True.
Miklo was a good old kid, dude. He just wanted to belong. He didn't want to pull out the gun. He pulled out the gun because Paco retaliated. So again, that scene at the end with me and Benjamin, and again, these are 2 brilliant actors working together. That was all in the look, dude.
That's awesome, man.
We didn't even need to say that. We just said, hey, remember, the scene is about this, dude. And Benjamin does it all, dude. I just give him the look. That vato hitting his kid. He's still trying to be like you, the baddest Chicano in the barrio. I threw it back on him. Benjamin looks at me and goes, you trying to say it's my fault? And I don't even say anything, dude. And he goes, he does it all with, he even brought tears, dude. Yeah, it gives me goosebumps. But again, a quality actor. And then, so what do we create? We create 3-dimensional Chicano characters, dude. Not one-dimensional, and that's why that movie, even though Disney changed the name, even though Hollywood Pictures squashed it, it still came out the other end as a important classic that Chicano families know about. Beyond that, because this film is loved in Japan, Kuwait, we have fans in Kuwait, Germany. It's an international film. It resonates beyond its borders.
I tell you what, Jesse, let's take a break in the action, dude. This is just simply unreal. Let's take a break in the action. Robert Rivas Radio, and I'm here with Jesse Borrego.
Robert Rivas Radio, baby.
Robert Rivas Radio is now streaming Tejano and much more 24/7.
Woohoo! Woohoo! Are you serious? Robert Rivas Radio is now streaming Tejano and much more 24/7. Woohoo! That means that Dr. Pepina's gonna be getting a raise. Dr. Pepina's gonna get a raise. I'm gonna get a raise. I'm gonna get a raise. I am gonna get a raise, ain't I?
Robert Rivas Radio is now streaming Tejano and much more 24/7.
Robert Rivas Radio, Tejano, and much more. And I'm back here with Jesse Borrego. And dude, all I'm going to say is this, Jesse. Vatos locos forever. How many people tell you that, dude, when you're walking around? They tell you, Vatos locos forever, dude. Right.
But I've tried to change it now because when I started doing Crazy Vatos and doing memorabilia, I wanted to make sure, I've been able to play really good American Latino characters, and artists and stuff in American cinema. So I wanted to make sure that I could spin, and I was proud of everything that I've done. So I've been kind of selective, especially in the last few years, with the roles that I play. So I tried to spin it, and I realized that with the younger crowd especially, I could put something on it. So now I tell them, hey, Vatos Locos go to college. And the chavalones look at me, the chavalones, right? And I go, think about it.
That's awesome, dude.
And for a while there, we were promoting Adan Hernandez's artwork from the film because, he retained a lot of the rights and a lot of the art paintings.
Sure.
Like he's got the mural from the end of the movie here in San Antonio. We had it up at the Guadalupe for a while. And so we had it up at the Josephine Theater for a little while. And we're planning to put all of it together in a Chicano fine arts collection, the Blood In, Blood Out art collection, and have it be the anchor for a Chicano fine arts museum, hopefully in the west side of San Antonio. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. And then we can showcase and celebrate all of these other Chicano artists of which no museum is showcasing their art.
That's right.
So that's one of my big dreams that I'm working on with Adan. And we started talking about this while we were hanging out on Blood In, Blood Out. We would talk about, hey man, the Raza and Aslan. And Adan was always like, that how Crucito goes, I'm painting for these galleries, and I'm not painting. That's verbatim what me and Adan would talk about. How he would say, yeah, all these museums and galleries. He goes, I want to get the artwork, and I want to get, this artwork right to the raza, So for a while we were talking about putting it on T-shirts, a very popular way to show art, But one of the things I want to do, because he owns a lot of these art pieces, is I want to put them in a collection, a priceless collection, I would say, and then have it be the anchor for the Chicano Fine Arts Museum.
Tell you what, Jesse, I got a couple more questions for you. Dude, I could talk days and nights about Blood In, Blood Out, but we got to move forward. But I do have a couple more questions for you. Close to the end of the movie, your stepfather in the movie is at the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for Juanito. There's a visit Juanito, and you show up out of left field, and y'all embrace each other.
Mm-hmm. Was
there closure there between y'all two?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, to talk about another Sananto connection, if you remember at the beginning of that scene, I'm pouring tequila, right? It's Dia de los Muertos.
Yes.
And I'm singing a little song. It's called Mal Hombre. Well, one of my high school friends who wound up singing for the Latin Breed, good friend of Gibby Escobedo's and a good friend of mine, Roger Velasquez wrote that, right? Well, Roger is recording his own CDs now, right? He's recording his own music. Roger recorded this song, Mal Hombre. If you look at the end credits of Blood In, Blood Out, you'll see in the music credits, Mal Hombre, written by Roger Velasquez. Well, Roger had written it. He had never recorded it. So I sang it a cappella. We wound up recording it, a mariachi arrangement, on this CD, Loteria, that Roger Velasquez has. So and if you look on YouTube, look up Mal Hombre, Roger Velasquez featuring Jesse Borrego. We wound up shooting, my brother directed a little video that we shot over here in the east side where the neighborhoods, where the Campo Santo looks like East LA.
Yeah.
So it looks like a scene from Blood In, Blood Out where I'm pouring the tequila. If you talk about the scene. So you can see it on YouTube, but that song is another Sananto connection because me and Roger were collaborating at that time. And I said, hey, let me take this song. And I went to Taylor and I said, my friend wrote this song and I want to sing it. I want to be singing it to Juanito when the scene starts. And he goes, well, let me hear the words. Yo fui mal hombre y no niego mi desgracia. You know, que venga mi castigo para siempre. Estaría de rodillas para siempre si acabara de llorar mi madrecita. And Taylor goes, I love it, do it. And so, you know, another Sananto connection. And years later, when he recorded it, Roger goes, you have to sing it with me because everybody knows you singing it. And so I sing a verse and the coro with him, Mal Hombre. But all of that to show you that the influence of my father, and Roger was the first musician that we hired, guitar player, to perform with my dad in our new band Los Muertos in the 80s when I formed Los Muertos. So Roger and my dad, we performed together for years as Los Muertos.
We're going to talk about that in just a little bit here, but otra pregunta.
Talk about closure, yeah, baby, full circle closure. Olvídate, my whole life is closure.
Out of all the characters in Blood In, Blood Out, out of all the characters that were portrayed in this movie, which one impressed you the most? We'll put yours to the side. Which one impressed you the most out of all the characters in that movie? The one that grabbed you, the one you said, wow, I like that character.
I think Enrique Castillo's portrayal of El Mero Mero, of the Montana character. You know, it was based on several real characters, you know, visionaries, activistas, but also pintos. It had elements of, you know, of a barrio intellectual. And so I think to me that was the most interesting character to see. I really love Ben's performance, you know, Damien's performance, all the Vatos Locos, Valente, Rodriguez, Raymond Cruz. The Vatos Locos were really there. You know, all the elements that the Vatos brought in La Onda, you know, Jimmy Santiago Baca, who played one of the dudes, you know, Danny Trejo's, one of his first forays in a real centered character, you know. You know, those were the characters that really resonated with me. I like all the fringe characters too, the stuff that people that weren't in the cultura were doing. You know, Michael T. Williamson, Benjamin's partner. You know, I like their dynamic. There was a beautiful character that never made it. If you ever look at the DVD, there's a woman that Benjamin is with. Roxanne Biggs. Roxanne Biggs was a Chicana character who was fighting to unionize the women's garment, the Latinas that were working, the Chicanas that were working in the women's garment industry. It was a great character. And her father, she forms a romantic bond with Paco, but her father is a police chief who knows that Benjamin was a vato loco and doesn't like him. So there was a beautiful, but they had to cut it out because the movie was so long that whole romantic story was like a 30 minutes. So they couldn't even allude to it, dude. So they wound up cutting her whole part out.
Wow.
But her picture still made the DVD, so everybody asks about that. And I go, yeah, it was never there. It should have been there in the other scenes, but I think they would have had to pay her probably. So that's probably why they've been putting it in.
So why include the picture on the DVD
yeah,
then, right?
Man, it's a teaser, dude. But her character was great. Her performance was great. And I thought that character in a narrative about, you know, a Chicano, you know, story would have been wonderful, pero it was too long, dude. So hats off to Taylor and to Jimmy Baca, but it was a great character.
Jesse.
You know, so the one that I love who never made it.
Jesse, you're done recording with the movie. You're done. That's it. Movie's going to go get taken care of, processed, whatever. How long does it take to release this character that you've had inside of you?
Let's put it this way. We finished in 92. They didn't release it until 94.
But how long did it take you for this character that you built up, that you sold? How long did it take to record the film?
It took us about a year. We were in development for about 9 months to a year. And then when we started principal photography, we finished that in about, 8 months. But then they started previewing it, and then we came back 6 months later and we redid the last scene, which we had to really give it closure to the story.
Okay.
And it made more sense for me and Benjamin to be the last characters on there.
Okay, so once you're done, Jesse, how long does it take for you to not to get rid of, but to release this character, man, that you've been selling all this time? Does it take a long time?
I think that when you get to the next job, I think as soon as I got to the next job, which was, I think, Mi Vida Loca was the next thing I did. And Mi Vida Loca, again, the character that I played, El Duran, was a serious pinto. So again, he was nothing like Crucito, you know. And so to me, it was a serious departure. You know, he was a pinto, but he also read Neruda. He was a romantic. He was a ladies' man, you know. And he was a lowrider guy. Tenía un classic, you know, Fleetline. I think I was driving a Fleetline,
right?
A 56. But it was a whole totally different character. Same barrio, you know what I mean? But Echo Park, but same type of jale, but totally different character. So here I was getting a chance to play two different Chicano characters from the barrio. Both of them eran del barrio. Uno fue pa la pinta, pero el otro no. Uno era tecato, el otro no. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
One was an artist, but the other one read Neruda. So there were similarities, but I could really play them differently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you had to separate them.
And so I think as soon as I did that, Crucito was gone. Then the very next thing I did after that was I Like It Like That. I don't know if you saw this film out of New York called I Like It Like That.
No.
But Rita Moreno was my mother-in-law, and John Seda, who played Chris Perez in the Selena movie, was my brother-in-law, and it was about Lauren Velez's character, my sister. Lauren Velez was the Latina lieutenant on Dexter. Wonderful actress, but this was her first film. And I was her brother, who was a transvestite, and a Puerto Rican transvestite from South Bronx. So I had to go from being Crucito to being this Chicano pinto, you know, in the barrio, you know, in lowriders, to this Puerto Rican character. So as soon as I go into the next dealio, man, it's gone.
Adios.
It's gone. And what I was trying to do at that time, if you look at it all collectively, I was trying to show everyone my range, right? I was trying to show my range. Unfortunately, Blood In, Blood Out was delayed. I Like It Like That was a hit in the indie world. It was a hit overseas, but not really domestically. Yada, yada, yada. So all these films came out at totally different times. Nobody got it. And in every film, I looked totally different. I acted totally different. You would not be able to tell by visually looking at it one character from the other. And so I think because I was so good at that, at transforming and becoming these totally other characters, people didn't get that it was me. And I couldn't build in the industry, I couldn't build this guy is able to do it all. Let's take him to the next level, which is what you need to do at a certain point. It's not good enough to keep doing good work. You have to become a bona fide box office star.
I understand.
And that's what keeps your career going. And
Sure.
even that only lasts that long. So I've been able to sustain a 30-plus year career just with my talent alone. Not by making the big bucks or by getting Hollywood to think I'm the next it guy. So it's been a struggle, but I've been glad because, again, it's like being in the moment. I love doing it. So now when I look back, I can go, hijo, I inspired a bunch of chavalones.
That's right.
And I was lucky to play a Mexican character. Every time they talk about Mexican-American character on television, every time they talk about the first, you know, Chicano characters on TV and the first Chicano actors in TV, and they mention all these people, and my wife always goes, man, they never mention you. And you were a Chicano character on Fame. You were a Latino. And I was like, yeah, but you know, at that time, Fame was syndicated. You know, you couldn't even get it in San Antonio in the 80s. It got canceled for Hee Haw. So my grandmother had to wait till 1 a.m. to watch it out of WGN in Chicago because it wasn't even in the affiliates in San Antonio, dude. And there was so to show you again how my career has gone. The stuff that I do comes out, 15 years later.
Jesse, let's move forward. A couple of weeks ago, I promoted an event. It was a benefit for Ernie Garbine at Pueblo Hall here in San Antonio. Promoted the event on my station, of course, and they had a gallery of stars. And little did I know that you have a conjunto band. Talk to me about this, man. Talk to me about your band.
Conjunto Borrego. It's a family conjunto. It was created specifically to showcase the talent of my father, Jesse Borrego Sr., who was, again, like I mentioned early in the interview, a lot of the inspiration for my musical talent. We grew up watching him perform. Llegaban, and even before that, as a young child, listening to him practice, and en la tocada, llegaban de la tocada, and, we'd wake up and Abuelita was making menudo or caldo or whatever, and, it was our chance to, see what the adults were doing, man. So I grew up in that onda. So when I would think of being a performer, when I was, a young kid singing in choir and performing, I did it. I remember when people asked me, how'd you become an actor? I go, I was 5 years old and they said, we're going to do the circus. All the boys wanted to be clowns and they said, no, Jesse, you're a lion. And instead of saying, oh, I want to be a clown, I went, okay, I'm going to be the best lion in the circus. That's when I knew I was going to be an actor. But the inspiration growing up was, well, who do you learn from? Pues ahí está, my dad, So I grew up with my dad's music. As a young high school student singing, learning pop music and all this, I would still listen, to my grandmother listening to conjunto music on the radio. So I grew up with that type of music. And who sang that type of music? My father. So everything that he would record, everything that I would hear him play, I would absorb and I would absorb and I would absorb. So I knew all of his songs by rote. I knew his entire album. And as I moved on, there was a part of my life where he was absent. And so that's the one thing I held on to, the music. And when we finally got back together, that was our common ground, la música. I had just been on a television show where I was singing. And so when I came back, hey, orale, what are we going to do, man? Let's do it. And so not only did I want to give him a chance to continue playing his music, but I wanted to create with him. So I formed a band called Los Muertos in 1988. And we rented the Guadalupe, the theater, and we opened my new band, Los Muertos, Jesse's new band, featuring his father and my brother on drums. And my sister started singing with us shortly after that. But I had also my dad's opening act, Los Haces de Texas. And Los Haces de Texas was the band that I remember him recording with. Just recently, we found the album that they recorded in 1970.
Wow.
So hopefully on your show, not only will we give you the old album, but we'll give you the album that he recorded with Los Haces de Texas.
Por favor.
Por tu bien. It's called Por tu bien.
There you go.
Incredible stuff. And that's the stuff that I was listening to at that moment, when I remember my father. So when we came back together, we started revamping a lot of his tunes as Los Muertos, but he also started playing with other groups. He started playing with this group called... it was la orquesta de Ramiro Severa.
I've heard of Ramiro Severa.
He was playing with Ramiro Severa.
Okay.
He was playing with... he started playing with this group called Hot Tamales.
Oh, yeah, sure.
He was... And so but mostly he was jamming out with Los
What
Muertos.
instrument does he play?
Accordion.
And what do you
He plays all the instruments.
What do you play?
I sing.
That's it.
I just sing. I play a little conga and some hand percussion, but, that was acquired. But
Gotcha.
I was just a singer. Strictly on Fame, they had me playing piano and playing guitar and all this stuff. It was all de mentiritas. I'm just a singer. But that was, really where I related with my dad. My sister was a singer. My dad was a singer. We knew his songs, right? My grandmother was a singer. And so that was our main thing. We were frontmen, So when I formed Los Muertos, I was the frontman. My dad was the main dude, and he brought this. Again, remember, we were listening to Los Lobos. They had accordion in their music. They were recording with Dwight Yoakam. So we were doing, and remember, Flaco Jimenez was starting to record with Dwight Yoakam.
That's right.
So we were doing Dwight Yoakam tunes with Flaco music. We were doing Los Lobos stuff with their accordion. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So it was easy to imagine.
Sure.
It was easy to imagine at that time this thing. Now, Tejano wasn't using the accordion yet at that time in the late 80s. They were doing strictly synthesizer.
Keyboards.
Keyboard.
Yeah.
So we were this new kind of hybrid that I was busting out here in Texas. So we were competing, man, and the Tejano groups were looking at us like, look at Jesse, dude, and his dad, right? And so we were playing all sides, dude. We were doing Tejano gigs and we were doing conjunto gigs and we were playing rock, local independent rock gigs. So we were, I had Dad in this new hybrid world, right? At the same time, he was getting back into his onda, right? Well, about the time that I had to move back to LA, my father had started playing with Rio Rami, this group called Rio Rami. Jorge Ramirez and Marvin Palacios, and I think they had been singing with Rene back in the day, and so they had this kind of hybrid onda of all kinds of stuff. So he started performing with them, and they had a really good gig here in town. To let you know that my dad was still in the mix, he was doing his thing, right? But he wasn't playing conjunto music. He was doing all this stuff. At the same time, I was missing music over there in LA, and when I would come back, we would do stuff, but it was catch as catch can, right? So I always had the dream. In 2006, a friend of mine in Denver had a Chicano music festival at Centro Su Teatro, Tony Garcia. And Tony says to me, hey, dude, I love your dad's music. I've heard it, and I had sent him a Rio Rami album, and he goes, I love it. Can we get him over here? And I said, this is it. If I don't do it, he goes, how can I get you involved, this and that? And I said, I got it. And I told Dad, and I sold it. I pitched it to him as a family band, and Tony said, great. We'll fly you guys here, pay you, esto que el otro, right? And I went back to Dad, and I said, Dad, I want to form a band. I want you to do conjunto. We're going to do your music, this and that. He goes, well, I need a bajo sexto player, man. I haven't had a bajo sexto player in a long time. And so we went out and we looked, and he had played, and I knew el primo de ¿cómo se llama? Armando Tejeda.
Okay.
Right? He plays with Conjunto Aslan. He plays with Valerio Longoria, and he had played with Valerio Longoria's relatives, right? And so he got together with my dad, like, woo, right away, man. Bam, they hit it off. And so we had the basis for our band. My father had known this young bass player, David Escalante, who had grown up, even though he was a Tejano player, he had grown up.
He was with the City Boys.
He was with the City Boys.
Right.
He had grown up listening to all my dad's music through my dad's old bajo sexto player. And so he knew all the conjunto onda, and he knew my dad's music. So once we had that trio, we had me and my sister singing, we had my brother on drums, we had our conjunto. So we went to Denver, and that was the beginning of Conjunto Borrego. So from there, we've just kept it up. I've gotten him back in the studio. We're recording with Joe Trevino, Blue Cat Records.
Okay.
And we've been recording my dad over there. And so one of the things I want to do is create kind of a publishing arm to put out all of my dad's music. Because
now, you tied in with Roger Velasquez también, ¿verdad?
Well, Roger was a part of Los Muertos, my original band.
There you go.
And we did a lot of music with my dad. But Roger went on, again, he was in the Tejano onda, and he was starting to write his own music. So Roger was starting to create,
Go a different direction.
Yeah.
Go a different direction.
And my dad was playing with us less and less, because as me and Roger took off with Los Muertos, we were doing more of a kind of Chicano soul funk hybrid, and we went away really from needing the accordion a lot. And it was okay because my dad was starting to play less and less at that time.
Yeah.
But that's why I formed Conjunto Borrego, because I wanted a traditional conjunto for my father. Music has always been important with me, especially my father's musical history. So not only do I want to have him to continue recording, but I also want to showcase the work that he did in the past. Recently, at Cine Festival at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, which is the longest running Latino film festival, I showcased a documentary that I produced, that my brother was also one of the producers on, called Las Tesoros de San Antonio, about these 4 women singers who were stars during the time of Cantinflas and Tintan and Antonio Aguilar. And they all had careers, and they were from the West Side. Y fueron a Mexico and Latin America and Madison Square Garden and all this stuff. Well, one of these ladies, Beatriz Llames, was La Paloma del Norte. My dad remembers playing with her as a young musician, here at the 123 Club on Alamo. So when I talk to my dad about this and he relates me to projects that I'm working on, I see that there's this thread of history. Las Tesoros, this documentary was a hit at Cine Festival, and now we're going to get it to the Michoacan Film Festival. We're going to get it to the San Antonio Film Festival. So hopefully when we premiere that, maybe we can do a little interview
of course.
On that with the filmmakers.
Of course.
Pero estas señoras we're all here from San Antonio during the time of Eva Garza and Lydia Mendoza. And so I'm proud to be producing this. The next things I want to do as a filmmaker is to continue to produce stories of our raza. I want to do a story of my dad. I want to do a story of the West Side sound, the West Side horns, and all the West Side sound that Sonny and, the Royal Jesters and that Randy and Ernie were all a part of. And
is that, I've always said that we can consider it Chicano music?
I would.
In a sense?
I would. I mean, I know people have a problem with that moniker because it means so many things to so many people, and people have always said, hey, what does it mean to you? Because I've always called myself a Chicano artist, a Chicano actor, but I also call myself a Latino actor. I also call myself an indigenous actor, a Native American, you know what I mean? An artist instead of an actor. And so people go, well, to me, the way you define yourself has to do with the values and the experiences that you treasure. And to me, those have been those of a Chicano,
Some people
because it encompasses all of those things. We're true Americans.
Some people seem to think that Chicano is too 70-ish. Now people are considered Tejanos, Mexicanos.
And I love that too. I say I'm Tejano.
There you go.
But when I say Tejano, I'm relating myself to a lineage that includes Chicanismo, that includes el indígena, our indigenous roots, that were pre-Tejano, that were pre-Hispano, you know what I mean? That had more to do with generations of that. And I think that that's what Chicano means to me. Chicano means having roots here for tens of thousands, for hundreds of thousands of years, So just because it's the modern world and we use computers and iPhones doesn't mean that it's changed the values.
That's right.
That I believe in.
That's right.
La Mata is still here. I talk about the river. The river still runs here. The river has nothing to do with the passage of time.
Santana recorded a song back in the 70s off the festival album. Mm-hmm. It's called The River. Ever get a chance, take a listen to it. It's awesome. I'm going to MP3 you the song. You're going to love it. I tell you what, just to let the listeners know, I'm here with Jesse Borrego here at his store, 2343 South Press, aquí in San Antonio. And
Southside.
And this store is very impressive. Just the artifacts that you have here, Jesse. I can't even, I'm a loss for words. It's so many cool things that you have at the store, amigo.
Yeah. The good thing about it was I was able to, again, like you've seen in a lot of what I've told you, I've been able to synergize a lot of the different energies in my life to create sacred spaces for our cultura to thrive. And I know I'm being kind of metaphysical with it, but it is a metaphysical thing. La cultura cura, and I really believe that. It's a spiritual thing. And, the things that I pray for in my life are the ability to impact my raza in a positive way. And the only way I know how to do that is to sing our songs, to dance our dances, and to tell our stories. And so I try to find a place that I can create, a campfire, a hearth, una casa, vato, a wellspring, una fontana, un río, you know what I mean? Un mar of those experiences so that people can benefit from them. And I hope that what's coming out is not polluted. I hope that what's coming out is not poisoned, So that's my concern constantly. And that's the act that I'm in constantly as a shaman, as an artistic shaman de nuestra cultura, as a Chicano, is that sacredness of how to tell our story in the best way. And that's why I've gone into film production. You know,
Right.
one of the things that I'm really doing now, including desarrollando las historias of my father, de estas señoras, las tesoros de San Antonio. You know, little Joe has to have his stories told. You know, Mel Casas and Jesus Treviño and Adán Hernández need to have their story told. Emma Tenayuca needs to have her story told. You know what I mean? On and on and on. These stories need to be told. Jesse Borrego, everybody's constantly saying, you need to tell your story. I'm not there yet. You know what I mean? I'm still focusing on being strong enough and hardy enough to tell other people's story that aren't there anymore. You know, los ancianos, los antepasados. You know what I mean? Nuestra cultura is still struggling to have a voice. So I think I'm still vital enough to be able to do that. And so I want to be a producer. I'm trying to create Tolteca Studios here in San Antonio. And that's going to pull all these strings together, where I'm going to take these chavalones that are at the Harlandale Film School, that are at CC, you know, a media program, that are in these mariachi academies at these high schools, and take them over there to, again, another sacred space, Tolteca Studios, where they can develop their stories, where they can study. And then I'll bring these major universities, you know, that I'm working with, that I want to create film programs. And now I'm pipelining these chavalones straight into higher education, straight into knowledge, straight into technical know-how. And now I have a pool. Now I tap into them. They're the new Jesse Borregos. They're the new, and I'm going to be able to create my stories, their stories, directly from them. And they're going to be the new Tejano stars. They're going to be the new Conjunto stars. They're going to be the new music stars, the new filmmakers, the new singers and dancers of tomorrow. And hopefully they will have learned my values. And now you got 10 of those vatos out there. Now you got 20 of those vatos down there. Just like Blood In, Blood Out. What I admire about Blood In, Blood Out, what we were able to do, they tried to squash it. They tried to make it disappear and be just another straight-to-video movie. But it grew. The work that we did, me, Adan, Taylor, Gabriel Beristain, the director of photography who was from Mexico, you know, all of these different, the barrio of East LA, the people that were telling their story, todo el labor, it kept going and it grew beyond that. It came out no matter what. And so I think that's how I see my work. That no matter how many times people say, you were good, but it didn't really become a success, that somewhere else someone is going to grab it and go, oh my God, you inspired me. I just went back and did, in Italy, Europe, I did a reunion of 6 of us from the old Fame TV show. We packed, we had 1,000 people at this concert. We sold it out. They raised money for this orphanage that builds orphanages for chavalones in Colombia, right? So we were doing it for a worthy cause. But just to see all the love from these gente that had been inspired by this show, you know, and the songs were all about uplifting and following your dreams and being true to yourself. So it wasn't anything that I couldn't get behind, but I realized that when I was 20 years old, I inspired a bunch of people to be inspired.
There you go.
And all of these people had stories about being at a low point in their life and us uplifting them. And I said, wow, man, this was when I was 22, 23, 24 years old, vato. Blood In, Blood Out was when I was 30 years old.
Wow.
It's been over 25 years. So you see, these things that people still get inspired by, and that you see me talking about them, so you know that I was there because I was inspired by the work that I was doing, that I didn't foresee, but I hoped what would be the future. So now that's the onda that I'm in now. Can I keep doing that with my father's music? Can I keep doing that with my music? Can I keep doing that with my dance? Can I keep doing that with my film production, with the narratives that I want to tell? You know, I've done it with my acting, and I still see myself doing great roles. Will I ever win an Academy Award? I'm not trying to win an Academy Award. I'm trying to get their story told. I'm trying to get my father's story told. I'm trying to get that chavalon's story told. You know, and so if I'm able to accomplish that, then I've done what I was supposed to as an artista. Porque para un artista, el amor, y eso le dijo Rita Vidauri. She said it in the documentary. She goes, para un artista, el amor del público es lo mejor. But love to me is not accolades and I want your autograph and this and that. Love to me is for them to see my work and be inspired to create more work, to help the raza, to educate them, to uplift us. And that's how I see it. And that was that last speech in Blood In, Blood Out, Santiago Baca. They can't bring us down, man. We're still going to rise up.
Jesse, any last words for your fans?
I would say thank you again for being so supportive. Learn more of my work because there's a lot of it there that you haven't seen that's been held back from you. Tecumseh, The Last Warrior, I'm very proud of that, a film that I did for TNT. Never came out on DVD, so it's only available on VHS or Laserdisc. So I'm going to try and get that to the people. Hopefully someday it'll be streamed. But I played a real Native American chief, and I put all of the love of my raza and our social values into that character. But I was also able to play a true American character. I was the lead. So a lot of people haven't seen that. The Mask Behind Zorro, a piece that I did for the History Channel that tells the real story of Joaquin Murrieta, who fought for the raza's rights, the Mexicanos' rights in California, you know, during a time when they were oppressing the raza after the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So these are works that I'm proud of that can be shown in schools. You know, the stuff that I'm producing now, Las Tesoras de San Antonio, we're going to be showcasing that. Gino's Wife, a local film that I did with Pepe Serna. I was really proud of that. But again, local production in San Antonio with the chavalones that I'm trying to inspire. So I'm getting a chance to be right next to them, and they're getting inspired by working next to me. But also seeing the work ethic and the artistic excellence that I'm striving for. So all of that I want my fans to appreciate by looking for it. So if they can go to my Facebook is Crazy with a K, Crazy Vatos SA. Like it, and you can talk to me there about getting some memorabilia, and I always promote the new work, and I also promote the stuff that I'm doing with Adan Hernandez on the Blood In, Blood Out art front and the Chicano Fine Arts Museum. In terms of music, look for Conjunto Borrego. Again, when we're promoting that, we'll probably do it through Crazy Vatos SA. But whenever I'm promoting my films, whenever I'm promoting my music, whenever I'm promoting my events, I'm on air a lot. So look for Robert Rivas Radio, look for television. I do a lot on television. But look for any future work through Jesse Borrego. Tolteca Studios hopefully will be up and running next year. We'll be doing stuff out of there. And then also my nonprofit is Cine Studio San Antonio. CineStudioSATX.org is that website. And that also shows a lot of the film work that I'm doing.
Jesse Borrego, thank you for being part of Robert Rivas Radio.
Aquí estamos, puro Sananto.
Vatos Locos Forever.
Vatos Locos Forever. You're listening to Robert Rivas Radio. One time, baby.
Robert Rivas Radio, Tejano, and much more.